Meeting. Hi, hello, welcome. This is Radhika, your host for today's meeting, and with me is Tax. So you know Tax, and he doesn't need any introduction, but I do. I represent SIGDoc, and if you remember Radhika, who used to trouble for release notes during the last release cycle, yes, that's me, and I'm here. And yes. Before we go ahead with the meeting agenda, note of caution. So we are going to record this meeting as usual and gonna upload it on YouTube. So be cautious what we discuss here and choice of words. And when you're not talking, please kind enough to mute yourself. Yeah, and I think let's get started, and I have the agenda in front of me, and yes, sure, we have the note taker. Jace has volunteered to do that. So first we have a demo from Edmund. Edmund, you are there? Hello? Is Edmund there for giving the demo? No.
They confirmed earlier. Why don't we move on, and then if they show up, we'll backfill them.
Okay, so next we have a presentation from Lucas and Dan from CNCF. Are you folks ready?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, so should I present this or maybe Dan? Dan, what do you think?
I'll just give a 30-second intro, Lucas, and if you could take over. This works is based on Velodrome, which was developed by Antoine Police at Google, and he made some good headway with it, but there was a lot more that we want to do, and we had some limitations based on using the GitHub API, where essentially you could only see current data as opposed to historical, and it also limited people's ability to fork the project and play with it themselves. So we took a new approach using GitHub Archives, where we download every action that was done on GitHub for the last 3 years, throw out everything that wasn't in the 80 Kubernetes repos, dump that or load that into Postgres, do a bunch of analysis, and put it into InfluxDB, and then shard it with Grafana. And so it's a little complex, but it's all open source. It's all here on the repo. And I'll hand it over to Lucas to show what we built so far.
So actually, can I share the screen somewhere here? Maybe start share.
Big green button that's super easy to miss. It's amazing. There we go.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so the project is basically processing the GitHub archives, and it's saving this, as Dan said, into Postgres database and into Influx, and visualizing this in Grafana. Now I've started working on Prometheus, but actually at this moment, the stats. Yes, it's here. It's something like this. When you can define various dashboards, there are already 35 or 36 defined dashboards, and all of them were requested by Brian and by Garrett. I had a special document with this, and you can see here some metrics. For example, let's say opened to merged. It measures time for the PRs from open to merge, or for example, issues age. This is about the open issues and the median and 85 percentile time from open to merge. And actually, I think it would be too long to show all those dashboards. I only wanted to show you the link that there are devstats, k8.io, and here is the GitHub project for this. And we are thinking about moving forward by using GitHub issues. For example, if anybody wants some specific dashboard with some specific metric or something like this, just create a new issue on the repo. As you can see, there are 4 open and 7 already closed. And then when I see the issue, I will try to take a look and implement these dashboards. I think that's all for our first presentation, something like this.
I just wanted to jump in and say, yes, please use issues. Lucas was super awesome. I opened an issue about the issues age dashboard that I think he was just showing earlier, and he turned it around really quickly. Put up a prototype initially and then deployed it to prod shortly thereafter. So thank you very much for being so responsive.
Yes, and I think it would be great to use issues and pull requests here, because all the discussion, like something is needed, something not, or maybe some people have some other ideas. So we can just take a look on the issue and put our needs here. Maybe some from the SIG leads can take a look and apply for anything they want. Actually, it's quite completed for Kubernetes. The next step is for the community to review those dashboards and give some suggestions. And in the meantime, I just started to prepare this project to support other projects like Prometheus at the moment. And the plan is to do the same for all remaining CNCF projects. Actually, this is not limited for CNCF, it's all open source. So you can put every possible GitHub project here and create your own fork and play with this. That's all.
Thank you, Lucas. Is there anything else under this demo?
No, that's all from me. I'm gonna stop sharing. If you have any question, please ask.
Yes, there is a question in the chat window. So
Okay.
Justin is asking, is that the median time for closed issues to have been closed?
Yes, it's for closed issues. I was starting, my initial work was for all issues, but many of them are still open. So in this case, our median was very, very long because it was counting issues that are not closed yet. So it was changed to closed, exactly.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. Are there any other questions for Lucas? If we don't have any other question, so
would be great to have any question and feedback on issues and pull requests, because that's the best place for any discussion. Then we have a track of everything that was asked and considered like this.
cool. Dan, do you have anything else to share with us?
Nope, that's all. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dan. So we have a missing demo. Is Edmund back? Can we have the demo if Edmund is here?
I see him. He appears. We don't have any audio from him, though, so let's give him a second here.
Okay.
There you go, Edmund. Now we have audio.
All right, you can hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I've been running around like a crazy person.
If you could raise your audio, that'd be great. No, that's pretty worse.
Better?
Actually, it was getting better. I think if you just hold it in front of your lips. that would work.
Any better?
Perfect.
All right. I think I'll just have to do that. Thanks. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yep.
All right, thanks. And hello guys, my name is Edmund Kimwakai. I'm the developer of Solvent. It's a web platform, and one of the things it does is allow you to manage configurations that you usually use JSON or YAML or even XML to manage. So basically, instead of writing those formats in text files, you can use this environment to do the configuration, especially if you have complex configuration, like people who have huge infrastructures that they need to manage and where the configuration is expressed in those files. It provides things like, not really templating, but dynamic value supplies in the same way that you can do with something like KSONet, which provides this type of functionality. It allows for composition, where you can have different parts of a huge configuration and pick and choose which parts of it that you want to use and get a final result. So I'll go through a very quick demo. I understand I don't have a whole lot of time. So let's see. Yeah, I think I need to log in there. All right, so this is an example of what a configuration expressed in this environment looks like. I would say it's relatively familiar. You have a name, and here you would have a value. I have set up a demo that's specific to Kubernetes. So what you're looking at is something, I'm sure for those of you who are experts in this field, you probably do find these familiar. I've talked to some people who are working on Kubernetes, and one of the feedbacks they gave was the ability to have like contextual documentation. So here, if you open up a particular object, a Kubernetes object, you can get documentation relevant to it. If you look at this file structure again, depending on how familiar you are with the Kubernetes API, you'd recognize all of these constructs. The environment allows you to represent these complex configurations using a file system structure, basically. So, instead of text file, you can navigate your file system and get to the particular object that you're interested in. It allows for composition, as I mentioned previously, which means this is one object, but it gets combined into this entire structure to provide the final result. So if I right click on this and say open in browser, it'll give me the entire result. When you're managing it, you don't have to deal with this big glob of JSON. You can just navigate to what you want specifically and deal with that. It allows you to provide dynamic values. So for instance, instead of this being a static value, I want it to be Java that util that date value. I think it needs to return changes here to Groovy, which means it'll run the code. Now, if I go back and rerun this demo object, instead of type, I can find it in this. All right, it looks like the demo got enough in my favor today. Let's see. All right, this is what I was trying to show. Initially, this was a static value, but by specifying it as being a piece of code, you get the value dynamically. This is what you get with some of the templating languages for JSON. Here, you don't need the templating because the environment provides that directly for you. Some of the other things that I'm planning to add based off of feedback are things like validation, so that you can actually take a look at an object within this environment, and if it doesn't, let's say it's required and you're missing a value for it, it can give you a hint that it's not it doesn't meet the schema requirement. And maybe a bunch of other UI hints that can make it easy to know what the values are supposed to be, and how you're supposed to configure it. But the idea here basically is to have a higher level environment for doing configuration instead of writing JSON or YAML. That's all it really boils down to. There is a ton of stuff that I could show, but I understand I have only 10 minutes, so I'll stop here and see if anybody has questions.
Thanks, Edmund. Anybody has any question for Edmund?
I have a quick question. Where's the data stored? How do you store that?
So there are two places where the data is stored. This environment is backed by an embedded Derby database, which makes it easy to make changes and save them. But in terms of the actual executable, in other words, this index, that INS file that you're looking at, it's a kind of executable. It's a JSON formatted executable that you're seeing here. That's just stored on a disk. So you can zip this up and move it to any environment you want. You can put it in source control, and you can re-extract this JSON executable back into an editable format that you're looking at here. So you have a database which is meant to support the environment, the development environment, but in terms of actually running the executable that results from the changes that you make here, you get a text file, which is a JSON formatted file. There's a middleware that understands all this stuff and executes it.
Thank you, Edmund. Any other question? We have just 1 minute left. Any quick questions from anyone? Okay. Looks like no other questions. Thanks, Edmund. It was a great demo. And let's move on to release updates. So who are here to give us release updates?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Anthony, the release manager for 1.9. Just a few announcements for 1.9. We cut Alpha 2 yesterday. Thank you to everyone who helped to fix the I don't know if there are some things that are in the pipeline that are going to be fixed, and then there are some things that we still need to get some more attention on. So we're going to keep looking for people who can help us with that. And so please reach out if you see something on the release blocking list that you know how to fix. And then the other thing is just we have now 3 weeks from yesterday until code freeze. So please plan accordingly. And then lastly, it's a good time to start thinking about how you're going to document and roll up themes and release notes for the features that you're working on, because next week we're going to be going through and reviewing all of the features and pulling that together.
Thanks, Anthony. Is there anything else left to discuss? Any questions? Okay, looks like there are no questions. It's time for SIG updates. We have SIG OpenStack updates from Steve. Steve, are you there?
Yep, I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
All right. So I'm doing the update today on behalf of myself and Igor, who are the listed leaders for the SIG. A very long time ago, actually, is that overall health of the SIG has improved significantly. So for a long time, we had only Angus Lees as the only active maintainer or active owner for the cloud provider code for OpenStack. We now have, I think, 3 other individuals on that list who are actively doing maintenance work, pushing changes, and looking after that section of the code, which is a good improvement. Chris from the OpenStack Foundation is still working on the test coverage aspect with, I believe, 2 of the OpenStack cloud providers who have commercial offerings. They're donating some capacity for CI. So we're still working on that. No major feature work occurring at the moment. We're still very much focused on bug fixes and paper cuts. So recently that's involved a lot of fixes to the OpenStack Cinder block storage support for various bugs, and also trying to simplify some of the cloud.conf configuration where we can auto-detect more of the IDs and versions that we have been previously. Particularly for kind of the default or basic case where someone is trying to get started for the first time running Kube on OpenStack. And for example, they only have 1 load balancer or 1 network, so the option is easily selectable. We do now have, as of this week, cloud provider reference documentation contributed by a couple of folks. The next step beyond that is to replace the OpenStack Heat Kube Up script, which we deprecated in 1.8. With a kubeadmin-based getting started tutorial, basically for using kubeadmin to deploy and then changing the configuration for the OpenStack cloud underneath it. The other main thing coming up, so a number of us are heading to Sydney next week for OpenStack Summit. Chris Hodge from the Foundation has 2. There's a number of general session tracks, entries related to Kubernetes again, but these 2 particular sessions are forum sessions, so more collaborative, people in a room, no slides type setup that Chris has organized that I just wanted to highlight. So improving the Go for Cloud and OpenStack K2S provider, and also how we collaborate between the 2 communities in terms of just from a governance is probably the wrong word, but we have SIG OpenStack in the Kubernetes community. There is a sister SIG, if you will, in the OpenStack community called SIG K8S, and it's basically the same people, but how we kind of liaise between those 2 and manage that is the topic of the second of those. Other than that, that's it, unless there are any other questions.
Are there any questions for SIG OpenStack? We have around 6 minutes for questions and answers. No questions?
I can ask one, which is like one of the big blockers to, like, for example, COPS adding support for OpenStack has been like, which OpenStack cloud, public cloud are we targeting? Like, are there some you would I don't know, you can't really play favorites, I know, but like, are there some that work better with Kubernetes today?
I don't know about work better, but I know that the two I believe Chris was working with from a CI perspective were OVH and VexHost. So those two, as I understand it, were donating some capacity to the foundation. So those are OpenStack clouds we're working with. There is, as part of that documentation updates, the reference documentation, we put in there kind of initial what the cloud provider expects in terms of minimum API versions at the moment. We need to have a more detailed conversation though over OpenStack release. So for example, now technically we say that we could support anything back to like OpenStack Liberty, but at some point we should get a little bit choosier about that and say, you know, we're deprecating support for Liberty and therefore we can drop some of that older code in the provider and focus more on the newer APIs. But that's still something we're going to have to discuss.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Now we have contributor experience update from Garrett. Is Garrett there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I'll just share my screen briefly. So quick update from Contribex. Some of the work that we've been going through, I'm sure you've seen it multiple times now. Lucas presented it, the DevStats board. It's a kind of a work in progress, but it's in a pretty good state right now. And please take a look and file issues as needed. Another topic that came up recently on the related topic was measuring contributor value, not based sheerly on the number of PRs submitted. And I think Quentin Hool from Huawei is working on drafting that. So that's some of the ongoing work we've got there. We've done some organization work and improved documentation work. But the kind of three things that we're focusing on this quarter is improving the metrics, so the dev stats, and then the contributor guide and the mentorship program. So Paris, Pittman, and George, and a few others from Contributor Experience are graciously going through the 65 or 70 pages of contributor guides we have living in various repositories for how to get started with Kubernetes and what are best practices, and they're trying to consolidate them. So they did a great job. They put all the docs together into one Google Doc and tried to cut out redundancy, clarify things, ask questions, and consolidate. I think they're on their way to like a 10-page consolidation, and they're hoping to have that done in the next few weeks and have something polished that can live potentially on the kh.io site that can be like the source of truth for getting started contributing to a Kubernetes repository. The second thing, again, this is something that Paris is taking on, is setting up a mentorship program. So we talk a lot about growing our leadership and the path from starting off as a brand new contributor to becoming a reviewer, an approver, and potentially a maintainer, and just growing yourself throughout the project. And one of the missing pieces is mentorship. Some of the feedback that we've gotten in the past was that individual mentorship is costly in terms of time and effort, but we're trying to roll out a group mentorship program. Again, Paris from Google is working on that, so please reach out to her with questions. Other things, there's some automation work that was done in the last few months, trying to add labels to owners files. So for specific directories, the bot can automatically assign SIG labels. It's assigning ownership and improving notifications and trying to make it easier for us to figure out which PRs where people are interested in. And then we've also added the status command and the milestone maintainers team so that to help the release process. On the process improvement side, this kind of goes along with the next slide of long-term goals, but we improve the process by taking feedback from the community, and the way that we get feedback from the community right now is through Slack or through the mailing list. I personally work better through the mailing list, but we've got some questions about handling tiny PRs. It seems like a lot of overhead to get approval for those. So what are strategies we can use to get these tiny PRs merged? Not that we don't want them, it's just that there's a lot of friction involved in terms of having an associated issue and getting the necessary approvals for something as simple as a typo fix. So we're working on that. We're working on getting more targeted notifications. Someone mentioned that following the community repo is difficult because they get a lot of PRs that are unrelated to the design proposals that they're interested in. And then suggestions for growing the reviewers and approvers pool so that we kind of limit the burden there. The last two slides are just on our long-term goal, which is to find better ways of soliciting feedback, whether that's one-off sessions with each of the SIGs, asking about how things are going or ways that we can improve the community as a whole, or encouraging more feedback through the working group channel or coming up with another channel there. And KEP isn't something I know too much about. I just heard that this is on the horizon from SIG architecture for like a standardized dev process for Kubernetes. So I think we're hoping to get more involved with that too. And then the last thing actually was to present the contributor guide outline, but I think it's a work in progress right now. So I'll have George present that a little bit later. If you guys are curious, here's a taste. It's not quite ready, but like I said, those 65 pages were pared down to kind of these top sections. I trimmed a little bit to make it easy to fit on the slide. But if you'd like to get involved, reach out to George Castro and he can help you get started there. If there are any questions, feel free to ask.
Any questions for SIG contributor?
So I'm happy to talk real quick about the KEP thing that's going on, and I think Quentin sent some mail to Kubernetes Dev with a pointer to it, if folks are interested. The idea there is this is driven out of SIG architecture, is that as we have big changes that are sweeping across the project, across SIG, having a way where people can publish these things and having sort of a queue of things that are going to be reviewed will hopefully deal with this sort of like, oh, somebody else showing up at the last minute saying, yeah, I care about that type of thing. Hopefully we can get a process down where we can get the stuff written, communicated, and decided upon. And that's the goal there. And this is really focused on bigger changes that are going across the project. It's not intended to be overhead for stuff that's like completely within a SIG. So it's really a sort of cross SIG coordination thing is the goal there.
But that's still in progress in TBD, right?
Yes, it's still in beta. I think, if folks want to try out that process, feel free to reach out. Like I said, Quentin sent some email to Kubernetes Dev with it. It's still rough and ready, but we want to get feedback and make sure that it adds value versus just more overhead.
Okay, if you could help me find that would be great, because I searched for KEP and enhancement and I couldn't find it.
All right, I'll send that to you, Erin, and I will put it in the notes for the meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Garrett or Joe? Yeah, there is a question. So asking for Huawei's work.
I can't. I actually reached out to Quentin about this yesterday or a few days ago. I know he's working on drafting a proposal for measuring contributor value and finding ways to assess the value of various contributions to the project beyond just number of pull requests or lines of code or lines of commits. But I don't know much more than that right now. I'll update as soon as I do know more.
Thank you, Garrett. Are any other questions? We have a few more minutes left. If we don't have any questions, we can move on to the next agenda item. Thank you, Garrett. It's a great work, because we get lots of questions how to contribute and how to start. So it's going to help many people who want to get started with Kubernetes. It's a great work. So with that said, let's start with the next agenda item. We have SIG AWS.
Yes, hi. So I'm Justin from SIG AWS. Update on where we are. The big news recently is AWS joining the CNCF. So welcome to AWS. So it will be interesting to see their participation going forwards, and we look forward to that and welcome them greatly. In terms of what we're actually working on, a bit like OpenStack, the work in the main repo, Kubernetes is mostly bug fixes. There is an ongoing effort, sort of separate really from SIG AWS, it's a cross-cloud effort, to split out the cloud controller managers, basically split out all the cloud providers into a separate controller. So that is also ongoing, but honestly isn't really affecting SIG AWS directly that much. There is a glorious exception to the no features happening, which is Micah Hausler is adding NLB support. So that is the next generation Amazon load balancer. Load balancers are still, or layer 4 load balancers are still a core concept in the Kubernetes repo implemented by the cloud provider. Currently, we only have support for ELB version 1, so traditional ELB, and he is adding support for NLB, which is much better and includes nice things like source IP preservation and things like that. There's also continuing, I want to shout out to the continuing progress on EBS issues and general stability of that, particularly Gnuified, who is doing some great stuff on that front. In general, though, most of the progress on AWS happens, I guess, outside of Kubernetes, which is, I think, as it should be. We're trying to devolve the project into a many repo project, and so we have great progress on DNS and IAM and ingress that happens sort of outside of Kubernetes. For anyone that doesn't know, AWS reInvent is in about a month. I think it's early December. So we are entering AWS announcement season. So I expect we will be getting more busy over the next 2 to 3 months. And of course, we'll see all the stuff that Amazon announces at reInvent. But generally, working on stability, adding NLB support, and general EBS improvements, and generally encouraging people to try to build things outside of Kubernetes where it is possible to do so. And that's what I have. And if anyone has questions, fire away. Otherwise, I will say I can confirm that the measure of your value is directly tied to how much you contribute to SIG AWS. That is the sole measure of your value. I can confirm that is. I got an early preview of that.
So, Justin?
Yes.
This is Mike Rubin from SIG Storage. In SIG Storage, we hear a lot about the fact that Kubernetes has some rough edges around AWS volumes, and that because the volume model is different, there are still hiccups and surprises that occur. I don't know, is this something that in SIG AWS that is on your radar? Because I know that I don't know anyone in SIG Storage who seems really overly focused on it. We just sometimes get reports and questions about it.
I don't know if Gnuified Hemant is on today, but that seems to be more something that Red Hat is driving more than something SIG AWS is driving. I think we should probably talk about that at some stage, and maybe I should attend SIG Storage. The model isn't that different. I think the big difference is that there's no sanity check in terms of when you mount an AWS device. You don't, on GCE, for example, you're able to verify the volume ID. It shows up in the device path, whereas you don't have that on AWS. So there's the potential for a cross mount there.
I think there's also some other issues involving the reuse of resources and how they get recycled or not. But yeah. Maybe, I guess my point is it might be good if someone from SIG AWS came to SIG Storage, maybe just once so we can sync up, or even just doing it over email might be useful. That's all.
That'd be great.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey, is the implication there that there's probably some missing CI test jobs that would cover? That sounds like a kind of flakiness description here, and it sounds like part of the SIG testing should be involved in this discussion at some point, right?
Sure. I mean, there's a pretty large effort in SIG storage on testing in general, and we do have some of these flakes. And I'm not the expert on this piece, so SIG testing is always welcome to come and talk about what we're up to and learn more about it. It sounds great.
We are happy to allow you to run more tests. That's totally what SIG testing is all about. We're not going to write the tests for you, and you're begging me actually checking this. Like AWS did give us an account that they are paying for that I need to verify whether or not we are actively using for the COPS job. But the idea is that if people want to see increased coverage of a variety of features on AWS, you now know who to go ask to pay for more funding there. Google is funding that your feature is appropriately exercised and tested on Google's cloud providers, and the model we want to see is that other cloud providers who want this same depth of coverage can fund that. Does that sort of answer that question?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have any other question for Justin? We have a few more minutes left. Any other question? If we don't have any question, we can move on to announcement. Thank you, Justin, and welcome AWS to Kubernetes. It's exciting to see you here. And yeah, we have set of announcement. Is Erin there?
Yes, this is me, Erin. My name is SIG Testing today. So I wanted to just float something by the community real quickly that I have floated by the affected SIGs in their Slack channels. But I will share my screen to show people real quickly. So I want to add SIG owners to every single job that's in the release master blocking test grid dashboard. So that dashboard here, I'll click away from this real quick. That's this dashboard. And so I'm speaking as the CI signal person for the 1.9 release team. What I do on a daily basis right now is check this dashboard out and notice which jobs are failing. For the jobs that are failing continuously, this dashboard shows me which test cases are failing. For SIGs that have been awesome and labeled their tests with their SIG name, I know which SIG to go poke to see if this particular thing is having a problem, right? So I can just copy, paste this text. I can go to Kubernetes. I can search the issues, and I can see, please hold. Wow, it doesn't even show up as the best match, really. All right, live demo failed. Well, normally, I have an issue corresponding to each one of these that hopefully somebody is actually assigned to. What I don't have are people that I can go poke for some of these jobs that are failing. So like GCE scale correctness, it's got the word scale in it. I'm pretty sure I can go poke SIG scalability to ask them if they are chasing down these test cases that are failing in this job but are not failing in other jobs. Test cases that are a little weirder, like don't actually have an owner right now, would be like the GCI GCE slow job, for example. It's GCE, or the GCI GCE serial job, which, spoiler alert, I really don't want this to be a blocking job for the release, and here's why. And I'm in the process of working with Jace to sort of document this a little more formally. But this is not a job that's going to consistently pass multiple times in a row and give us a clean, confident feeling that Kubernetes is or is not ready to go out the door. However, nobody owns this job. So while I can poke most of the individual SIGs here, there's no person I can talk to if this job as a whole fails. My proposal, let me go back to the meeting notes here, is that I assign SIG GCP to all of the jobs that involve standing up GCE or GKE clusters that are not SIG specific. And then I'm going to ask that SIG testing own the verify and test go jobs So that's to say that SIG testing doesn't own or write most of the unit tests, but we want to empower you to run all of the unit tests that you can. So if unit tests as a whole just flat out aren't working, that's absolutely a SIG test problem. But if a specific unit test is failing, we're going to go find the right SIG. So the process that I'm using for this is documented in this comment, and I'm planning on moving it into the SIG release repo to talk about how, like, first I go file an issue against either the job or the test case. I use the appropriate SIGs test failures GitHub team so that hopefully the right people are notified. And if I need to have a quick conversation on where to route the issue, I use Slack to go talk to the right person. I've mentioned each of these SIGs and I've pinged each of them in their channel. My one bit of hesitance is that SIG GCP is a really new SIG. And I don't know how folks feel about involving SIG GCP in this. Generally, in the past, when a GCE or GKE cluster hasn't come up pretty consistently, I've gone and bugged SIG cluster lifecycle just because I know that's where some of the GKE folks hang out. But in this brave new future where GCP kind of exists, I wanted them to start taking ownership of that stuff.
So, Erin,
yes.
I've been working with Adam Worrell, who I believe is a SIG TL for GCP. They've got a mailing list. Please bring this up in the mailing list. They are, putting together a whole agenda of things to focus on and questions to deal with.
Okay.
So, they're open for business and ready to, listen, contribute, and be, a part and find what their role is inside of the community. So, I think Adam may not be here right now, but that list is open 24/7, and he is ready to respond.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I just wanted to float that by the community because I know we all experience the pain of flaky tests and the release burn down kind of going a little wonky, especially during code freeze. This is our effort to attempt to make things better. So hopefully this sounds good to everybody. That's all I had.
Thanks, Erin. Any questions for Erin? I don't see anything. So there is a reminder on November 15th, we have the office hours. And yes, George is going to talk about that.
Yeah, just a reminder, we're having that in 2 weeks. And it's going to be the third Wednesday now of every month. And that's going to be like a fixed time. Currently looking for volunteers specifically for the West Coast time slot. So if you follow the link, there's a volunteer spreadsheet at the bottom. You can click and add yourself and your level of commitment. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, George. And we have the last announcement. Ihor.
Yeah, just a brief announcement from me and from CNCF. So the current year is almost done in 2 months, and KubeCon is happening in almost 1 month. And we're announcing the community awards for this year, for 2017. It's not only for Kubernetes community, it's for entire CNCF community, but of course Kubernetes as CNCF project should definitely participate in this one. So we're announcing 2 major awards for 2017. One of them is for Top Cloud Native Ambassador, and the second one is for Top Cloud Native Committer. I won't go into details right now. All the information about the awards, how you can vote and who can apply, and how the nomination and voting process will go is under the link in the media notes. Also, it's on the Kubernetes Dev mailing list. So please open, please read, please vote, please nominate. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach me directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ihor. Any question for Ihor? Okay. Jay says some text for us on the submit page. Okay. Okay, he's pointing to the office hour page for nominating.
Jace, is your question to office hours or to, okay.
Do we have any questions for anyone, for Ihor or for anyone, under any agenda items? It looks like no questions. We are on time. thanks everyone. It was a great meeting. This is my first experience of being the moderator. And thanks, Jace, for taking the notes. Thanks, George, for recording it and all
Great
the.
Job.
Thank you.
Great job, everyone.
Thanks all. Happy Thursday.
Bye, everybody.
Bye there.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.